Have you ever stopped reading a book? Not because it's bad, but because you kind of feel like it crosses a boundary that you're just not okay with. It just recently happened to me when I was reading The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. I love Rebecca Yarros. I've been reading her books for a long time. I love an emotional romance. I love to self-sabotage, and I really love a book that's going to make me cry and just take out everything in me. But I do have boundaries, and I feel like we don't really talk about boundaries when we're talking about romance books or we're talking about books that we read. It's very important because trigger warnings are tools that we should be using. If you've never seen my dark romance episode, please go back and look at that one to know what I feel about trigger warnings. But I feel like trigger warnings are definitely something that we need to be paying attention to because they're helping you define if you really want to read that book. I picked up The Last Letter because I thought I had already read it, but I didn't. I was like, you know what? This book is just being picked up everywhere. And it was all over my TikTok. And I was like, you know what? Let me pick it up again. I started reading it in my Kindle. And then somebody had said something about, oh my God, her son dies. I was like, wait, there's a child death in here? I kind of thought so because obviously when you start reading the book, you already know her daughter is sick and she has cancer. So you kind of know where this is going. So for me, any illness that's in a child, I'm already like, oh, I don't know. Just a little backstory. I have a 7-year-old. When she was little, I developed postpartum anxiety. And I check myself for trigger warnings. So for me, that is a big boundary when it comes to kids. I'm a dark romance girly reader. I have boundaries to where anything that's involved in a kid, I'm very careful when I read it just because I obsess with it. And then I start thinking it can happen to my child, and I don't like that feeling. I really try to stay away from anything that has to do with kids. So anything involving kids when I read in my romance books, even though I know it's fiction, I really have to stop and think to myself, do I want to keep reading this or do I want to spoil it and see what's happening? But I was already so invested in Beckett's and Ellie's story for The Last Letter that I went into TikTok and I had to spoil. It comes down to it's not her daughter that dies, it's actually her son. I was already far along to where I am building a relationship with, this kid because he was the strong one in the story. So at that point, I was like, okay, I don't want to know what happens to him. I did read the spoilers online and I saw it on TikTok, and then I went past the chapters and went to the last chapter and the epilogue, and I needed to know what the ending was about. I needed to know where these two characters were going to be. The last 2 chapters honestly told me what I needed to know. And I didn't have to go through reading what actually happened to Colt, which I know what happened to him, but I didn't have to experience it. So that was very important for me. With that being said, I feel that when we read books, as a bookstore owner myself, I like to really highlight trigger warnings. And I know I keep mentioning it, but I think it's very important that we talk about boundaries. What are your boundaries? What do you feel that you don't allow in a book? That doesn't mean that book is not okay for someone else, because even though a lot of people love The Last Letter, I had to skip those chapters. That doesn't mean that you have to skip the chapters. For you, it could be okay. But me personally, I knew my boundary. I knew that I don't want to do that because then I'm obsessing. So I stay away from stuff that has to do with that. I wanted to talk about this today because it's very important that we talk about those boundaries. You as a reader should be able to have those boundaries, and you should be able to recognize your boundaries. It's important that we know that having boundaries doesn't make you less of a reader. I don't think I missed out on so much from the story, but not capturing that that part of the story. I still know about it, but I didn't have to experience it on my own. And that was my personal boundary. I don't think that makes us less of readers. And I think that's very important for you to know, that if you start picking up a book, you feel, you know what, this book is not what I thought it was gonna be, and I don't want to keep reading it, you don't have to. That doesn't make you less of a reader. It doesn't mean that you don't appreciate that author. Rebecca Yarros, I love. I just couldn't read that piece of a chapter. But I devoured Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm, and Things We Leave Unfinished. I completely did that. So I still love the author. That little piece of the story was just not for me. I also want to add that I really don't want you to leave this video thinking that The Last Letter was a bad book, because it's not. It is a beautiful book. I was so invested in Allie and Becca that I had to go back to the last 2 chapters just so I knew what their ending was like. It is a really good book, but it is going to make you cry. And if you're a person that you don't like child loss and you don't want to cry, this is not the book for you. And that's totally okay. When I picked up this book, I learned so much from reading this book, because I learned that I have boundaries. It's okay that I don't want to cross them. It's okay that I skip chapters in order to still be invested in the 2 characters that I like. If you take anything from this episode, let it be this. If you read a book and you know nothing about the book, and you feel that, you know what, I don't like the direction this book is going, I'm going to skip chapters, or I'm just not going to read it at all, it's okay. You're not less of a reader. And just pick up another one that you like. We sometimes don't know how we're going to feel about the book until we pick it up. So it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. What is a reading boundary that, even though the book has been highly rated, that you see on TikTok, you see on these social medias, what is something that makes you put it back in the shelf? I want to know what you think. I want to know if you have boundaries. I want to know that I'm not alone in this, I guess. So I definitely hope that you guys learned something from this video, and that you know, very importantly, that having boundaries in your reading journey or in your reading experiences does not make you less of a reader. So put it down in the comments section. Let's be respectful of each other as always. And I want to know what is that boundary that has kept you from reading a book, picking up a book, or maybe a genre that you're just like, yeah, that is not for me. Because this might surprise you coming from a dark romance girly, but as I mentioned, for me, is anything that has to do with kids and illness, or anything that has to do with kids, is just a hard limit.